And there's the call to post, folks. Welcome back to Harnessing Your Wealth. I'm Billy Peterson. We've got Cade Peterson here alongside me, and special guest today, Andrew Offerman. Give you a bit of a background with Andrew. He is currently sitting right now in New York, and he is preparing for what is coming up to be, what is it, the 150, more than that, isn't it, Andrew?
Yeah.
Belmont Stakes?
Yep. Second one in Saratoga, and certainly a unique history to the race, but excited that we're just a few weeks away now from the Belmont
Right.
Stakes.
People who maybe have been watching the Triple Crown this year a little bit just watched last weekend a real special performance from Journalism, which was an amazing feat he had to overcome. Andrew, you've been watching thoroughbred races for a long time. What did you think about that Preakness Stakes?
Not a lot to compare it to be honest with you. Obviously, the horse found some difficult traffic, but the fact that he was able to not only fight through a hole that really didn't exist, but then continue to persevere and overcome the additional 4 or 5 lengths that he had to make up. I don't really have a whole lot to compare it to. We were talking yesterday, actually, around the office about what it reminded people of, and I think Fleet Alex is the obvious comparison, just based on Preakness and another very difficult trip. But nobody was really coming up with a example of a race where the horse had overcome such a difficult encounter so far back in the pack. So it was definitely a special performance and vindicated, I think, a tough trip that the horse had in the Santa Anita Derby as well. So he's pretty special athlete.
Good looking horse. I mean, just a beast, just a beautiful horse. Yeah, I was surprised that there wasn't more animosity after the race. To be honest, I've ridden in races like that where I've been on the losing end of a horse, plowing his way through where he shouldn't be. Actually, just that rider had really a split second. He had to make a choice. It was, am I going to try to squeeze through on the rail, or am I going to try to nose my way in to this position? And you saw Pratt, who kind of sensed that horse coming in and tried to close the gap. I mean, obviously race riding, trying to keep that horse from penetrating into that spot. And then, all three horses took a major jostling. But back in my day, there might have been a fist fight or two after that race. That was something. A Fleet Alex went down, almost went down. I remember that race. He stumbled, clipped heels,
Right.
and then had to restart. This horse had to fight and claw and, just essentially will his way through that race or through that hole to get up. So neat race. For everyone who is listening here, Andrew Offerman is the Senior Vice President of Racing, New York Racing Association, General Manager, handles all racing activities, huge undertaking, a lot of employees, a lot of oversight in order to run a successful race meet and then continue to do that at multiple locations. And we were talking before the show about how Belmont is now under construction and will be for a while longer. So the Belmont Stakes will be actually held at Saratoga Racecourse. So Andrew, tell us a little bit about that experience of running it at Saratoga. I guess it's not really a race meet going on at the same time, right? So it's just going there for that one race or a race card?
Correct. So Saratoga, upstate New York, about 3 hours north of Aqueduct and Belmont, is open for training essentially from April to November each year. The race meet itself really runs traditionally from the second week of July through Labor Day. But obviously moving the Belmont up there the first week of June requires us to kind of change our strategy and get the facility up and ready for operations of, 6, 7, 8 weeks ahead of schedule compared to traditional timing. It was a special event last year. I think a lot of anticipation. First time a Triple Crown race had been run at an alternate venue in probably close to 100 years. So there was a lot of anticipation for it. The event thankfully went really well last year. So we're looking to try to replicate that success this year. But anytime that you try to move an operation and our team kind of on a little bit different cadence than it's used to, there's definite challenges in getting a building that's, at this point in time is over 150 years old, ready to go, and come out of an upstate New York winter to be ready the first week in June. So team's working hard to get it done. I'm sure that we'll be in a similar position this year, but winter, upstate New York, a little bit different than downstate New York. We're just coming out of winter here within the last 30 days.
Really?
So there's snow on the ground as of about 45 days ago. So we're all systems go to try to get ready here in the next couple of weeks.
Get ready to roll. That a huge crowd last year for that race.
Yeah, the venue itself caps at about 50,000 people, just in terms of comfort, and we sold out last year, so it was as full as most people on the team could remember it. Maybe the only comparison was when American Pharoah ran in the Travers following his Triple Crown effort. Was the kind of the only other day people could remember that maybe was quite that busy.
Yeah, busy. Back in the day when, racing was more popular, and I hate to say that because I think it's making a comeback. I really do. I think racing is starting to resurge. But back in the day when there were just kind of match races like Seabiscuit, War Admiral, I mean, there were fans lining both sides of the rail. I mean, it was something. People would drive hours just to show up to the racetrack. What's being done, do you think, to recapture the excitement for horse racing and to maybe get the younger generation to consider it instead of just the more of the traditional sporting venues?
I think a few things. I think, when you look at the significant events across the industry, really the challenge hasn't been on those significant event days. I think people still want to go out, have a good time, especially if they see it as quality entertainment at a reasonable price. So the major event days, I think, are seeing a lot of success because people are excited for the entertainment that they bring. I think the challenge from a racing perspective, if you go back 50 or 60 years, it was a 4 or 5 day a week sport in just about every jurisdiction that it existed in. And a lot of those places, it was held, during the middle of the day. And I know that, society's changed a lot over that time period. Certainly people's lifestyles, work-life balance has changed a lot over those time periods. But, there's not a lot of people that are free at noon or 1 in the afternoon to enjoy leisure activities, I think, on Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays anymore. So I think that the major events on weekends that can be promoted and that can be marketed in a competitive landscape are successful. I think that the day-to-day events that are held at maybe, less opportune times or in more competitive marketplaces are struggling. And I think, unfortunately, the sport's been kind of slow to adapt to that change in society. And there's good reasons for that. I mean, the economics behind it and how it needs to function in a lot of jurisdictions to make sense for the participants are difficult to change. But I think, when we look at things here, we've seen tons of success and growth in our major event days, and our challenges are really based on kind of those weekday afternoons and some of the times that other people have the same challenges.
Mm. Well, now, Andrew, I see a lot of people, especially this young generation, who are not working. This day and age, there's a lot of kids that aren't working. So maybe that's the market you're going after. They're like Cade was watching this kid he was getting so much coverage during the Preakness. I'm like, who the hell is this guy? And Cade's like, he's a social media influencer. So I'm like, bingo. I mean, that's probably bringing in tens of thousands of additional views to the race because this guy's just known on the internet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure,
Griffin
you've seen
Johnson.
that kid he's a fractional owner of Sandman. He's got a lot of traction. I think a lot of people interested in the sport or the races that Sandman's running in just because of him. Do you think that'll be good for the sport long term to have influencers like that who might not really even know how to put a halter on a horse?
A lot of owners don't.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the sport's been slow to find how to use those strategies successfully. It's certainly not, from my background and the work that I've done within marketing, I'm not an expert in influencers by any way stretch of the imagination, but it certainly seems like something specifically with what Griffin's done that could be used in a different way to attract a new audience. I think finding the right people is key. I mean, he couldn't have possibly done more, in my opinion, for the sport over the last few weeks. How engaging he's been even outside of the content that he's created and responding to people within the industry and answering questions and comments and doing interviews. It's been cool to watch. I've talked to a few people that have spoken to him directly, and I think he feels the appreciation from the industry similar that the industry feels from him. And if we can build more relationships that, both sides view that positive benefit from, I think that it'll serve us really well long term.
One thing I've noticed with him is I was looking at his content and scrolling through the comments. I always like to see what people are saying. And you get a lot of the people that are just like, this is harmful to the horse, shouldn't be doing this. The horse doesn't want to do this. and he was responding to these comments, explaining how well these horses are treated, how well they're kept. And I thought that was really cool to see that he's actually going out there and defending the sport, and he understands it. He's not just, getting in for the fame. It seems like he's trying to grow it from what I've seen. So
I interacted with him in person, but obviously, I've seen significant amounts of him spending time with the horse, being back in the barn, talking with Mark Cassie, the trainer of Sandman, learning about, what the horse does on a regular basis, what they're doing to try to get to the horse to perform at its highest level of potential. And you can tell that he's genuinely interested in the horse and in horse racing, which I think makes a big difference in terms of how he's able to communicate with the audience that maybe is less familiar with what the sport does.
I think that's such a big part of racing and what the potential is going forward, because I have a lot of friends and they always usually will say something like, "Oh, I'd like to go to the races someday. Will you let me know? We'll go to the races." So it becomes like a one-time thing. Oh, go to the races. But I think if we can figure out a way to get them more interested in continuing to go and then learning the nuances about what it takes to put this race meet on, or a program, just a race day, a single horse, for example, what the workload is and the effort that it takes to bring that horse just to a certain race, all the people that are involved, and then maybe things about how to bet. People start learning about placing a wager, and then you get the big profile people who somehow got into the business. We watched that during the Kentucky Derby with Jason Worth and Alex Bregman, who wasn't in the Derby, but we've seen in past examples of famous people, profile figures like that, who have an interest in horses or somehow got partnered up. And those are good stories. I think we need more of them. Not necessarily just the rich people, because sometimes people assume, well, you have to be rich and famous to afford that. You can get a partnership together like the Smarty Jones group back in the day, and just a bunch of normal folks, working class folks who got in. What do you see being done there at the sales? And do trainers want new owners like that, young guys like that, to start helping to promote the sport?
I think, yes, definitely is the short answer to that. I think that the question is how we use some of those assets to do more collectively. To your point, Jason Worth last year, part owner of Dornoch, who won the Belmont, was fantastic. I mean, sat and talked with anybody that wanted to come up and talk horse racing with him for days after the Belmont and for large portions of the Saratoga meet. And I think that the question is how we utilize some of these people's experiences to create a larger marketing ecosystem that brings people into the sport, and then once they get into the sport, they pair up with the appropriate group that gives them the experience that they need to enjoy horse racing. And that's, as you well know, a little bit different for a lot of people. Some people may be interested in a small amount of money. Some people may be interested in a significant amount of money. Some people may want to own a horse with their friend. Some people may want to own a horse with 1,000 people that they've never met before. And those are all very different experiences. And obviously, then the other side of that is that's a very different relationship for the trainer to manage as well, based on what that group looks like. And so if you can find the right group for the owner that pairs up with the trainer that works well with that specific type of ownership group, theoretically, the entire experience is better for everybody, and I think leads to more success. And I think sometimes all the different mechanisms that are out there aren't necessarily matched up as well as they should be, based on what each party's looking to get out of the relationship. So if we can do better trying to pair up the right types of people with the right participants, I think it is better served for everybody at the end of the day.
Yeah, and even as we know, I don't know the statistics on this, the number of horses that actually go on to be successful or produce more than it takes to get them into the racing world, because it's a lot of money. There's a lot of costs involved, but it's a small percentage of those great horses. But that's the excitement of the whole thing. That's what people are looking for. That's the draw of it, is you are looking for that moment. And sometimes that moment is just a maiden race win at Prairie Meadows or something, just it's so special. I can't find a feeling or replicate the feeling that I have. Even when I was riding, it seemed like, well, you've won hundreds or thousands of races. Why does it matter? And I say every race that you win matters. It's a fun experience to be in that winner's circle. So that's what we're looking for, to bring more people into the sport. I think it'd be awesome. Do you go to the sales at all?
So members of my team attend most of the major sales throughout the country. I typically make it to 1 or 2 sales a year. Obviously, Fasig has a select sale that's just across the street from Saratoga, so that one's easy for me to get to. But my team or myself probably attends every major sale, really, at least from Kentucky East each year, talking with owners, talking with trainers, finding out what's new or what's going on or what their concerns are. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, whether it's at a sale or at the track or at another track or a training center, we're in the business of customer service, trying to figure out what's going on in the industry, what people need from us to be able to participate in New York, and maybe what we could do better. Because you guys are well aware this sport has a lot more losing moments than winning moments. So obviously, when you can figure out how to try to mitigate the losing moments and make the winning moments more special, you're hopefully doing something correct.
Oh, for sure. Do you guys feel like in thoroughbred racing, there are the issues that quarter horse racing deals with a lot, which is in the illegal substances and banned substances, and we call them the cheaters? Is that prevalent in thoroughbreds in your opinion?
I think that HYSA, the federal regulation of horse racing on the thoroughbred level, although there's a lot of different opinions about HYSA and some of the rules that are in place, the standardization of the drug testing process, I think, has been significant on the thoroughbred side, so that that essentially every participant at every covered horse race throughout the country is getting tested the same way for the same substances, and that there's a quality control process behind that. So I think that there's been a lot of steps made to make sure that participants across the country are following the same set of rules. I think, like any human or animal sport, drug testing is only so good as the technology that's behind it. It's obviously a product of figuring out, what you can test for before people are able to find substances that are not testable. So obviously, no different than the Olympics. That's a similar challenge that every lab faces in terms of how able you are at finding the next substance. But that's not unique to horse racing. That's really prevalent in any drug testing sport.
Any sport where you have money on the line and it's a physical, endurance sport, something like that, people are looking for an edge. You start to wonder, you start questioning when certain trainers or owners getting a win percentage that's uncharacteristic or starting to get stretched for an extended period of time. People start scratching their heads and wondering, is there something going on? And it's a bad thing to assume that you're always wondering if so and so is cheating. But they've uncovered some things with thoroughbred world. I had a Triple Crown winner last year for the first time since Special Effort in the early 1980s, and
In the quarter horse world.
in the quarter horse world, yeah, Triple Crown. And come to find out that horse was being, given an illegal substance. So the whole thing got flipped on its head. It's a black mark for the industry, and it's not, I don't know, it's not great. So we're all trying to figure out a way to get through that and try to eliminate some of the unfortunate consequences that goes into it. Like you said, that the testing is only so good as what they know, and they're always finding, some of these labs are finding new drugs that we don't even know about yet. So I wish that were not part of it. My question for you is, what do you love most about horse racing, and what do you love least?
It's a great question. I think what I like the most about horse racing, it kind of goes back to a topic we were talking about before. When you talk to some of the pro athletes that have gotten into horse racing after, and I'm curious, Billy, based on your experience, if you feel the same way about it, the excitement of watching a race and the feeling it gives you when you win is something that they really only kind of compare to the adrenaline rush of winning, a sporting event, a major game, maybe in your case, a race from a jockey's perspective. I was not a pro athlete. I was barely a college athlete, but I still enjoyed winning. Like most people that are competitive in sports enjoy winning. I can't really replicate the nerves or the feeling that I get if I have a horse that I'm connected to either through my family or my friends win. a significant race with really anything else that I participate in. So as weird as it is, like it's still the adrenaline rush you get when a horse that you're involved in some way, shape, or form, or have a significant rooting interest in comes to the head of the stretch, and you think that you have a chance to win. You can't replicate the feeling. So that's probably what I like the most about the pure competition.
All right.
From what I like the least, I think that the reality of it from my perspective is that if you send 8 or 9 horses out to the racetrack, 7 or 8 of them are coming home losers. So the difficulty that you have to deal with the swings of emotion from the top to the bottom are very difficult. Obviously, things can happen within a race or within the starting gate or within preparation for a race that are largely outside of my control, whether it be weather, human mistakes, other circumstances like that. So dealing with the challenging kind of up and down nature of what horse racing is, and the fact that for every one excited party, you're left with 7 or 8 that are probably equally as disappointed, makes it very challenging to try to keep people, down that level or even headspace over the course of a day, a week, or a month.
That's a great answer, right?
So many unknowns that people don't understand when they just tune in to watch the Kentucky Derby once a year. You think, oh, it's a hard thing to do to win a race, but then you're not factoring in, is the horse sound? Has it been training good? Do we have a good jockey on here? It's a lot, and it takes a lot of luck to even get into the race, let alone win it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it just makes the feeling all that more special when you get into the winner's circle, knowing all the work that goes in behind the scenes.
When everybody's trying to win those caliber races, there are literally tens of thousands. What's the statistic on number of foals each year?
Yeah, 17 or 18,000, depending on the year. Yeah.
Wow.
And I'm sure that every single one that's born is the potential Kentucky Derby winner. I mean, everybody thinks so.
That's why you got to do it. Yeah. To Cade, to your point, I think that the thing that's difficult is if a horse runs every 3 or 4 weeks on average, let's just say 4 weeks, you've got 28 days of prep work that go into that one race. And if I thought about my career from a standpoint of I was focused on one goal or one target and I spent 28 days preparing for it, if that didn't turn out really good, like would be a very, very frustrating career for me if I spent 28 days focused on one thing. But that's really what almost all of those horses are doing. So there's an awful lot of effort and attention put to that one specific performance that everybody sees in the afternoon.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Did you happen to tune into Race for the Crown on Netflix?
I've watched it. I may be caught in one of the scenes, the side of my face, talking to the jockeys in the locker room. Yes,
I think I saw him. I think I saw him on that. Yeah.
I got a lot of people that have no idea about horse racing, but just know that I love the sport, that reached out to me about the show. So I think that also brought quite a bit of publicity to the sport.
Well, the couple of the owners there was flamboyant, and it showed a different side of it that most people don't realize, that part. And then I like the part with the trainers and getting into the barns a little bit more, meeting some of the jockeys.
Yeah, I think that the how much that show was watched by the non-racing public surprised the industry. The industry knew that show was being filmed last year. Throughout the Triple Crown series, there was a lot of attention put on it. But I think that the quantity of viewership from outside of the industry surprised the industry a little bit, which I think was great because the show, showed a completely different side of the sport than most people see when they turn on the TV to watch the Kentucky Derby on a regular basis. Mm-hmm. Rumors that there may be a potential second season of it, which I think would be great and continue to show, hopefully, other angles or different perspectives of horse racing. I think people forget that more than what goes on in the afternoon to our conversation earlier, you've got, at least in our case, 1,900 horses that are stabled at Saratoga, 125 trainers, 600 dorm rooms. Like, it's really an entire city that is operating off of this racetrack, and the storylines that exist, and all the things that are going on in their day-to-day life as they prepare all these horses to run. You can tell stories for days about stuff that's going on because it is really like having your own city in your backyard.
It's a huge economic impact, just just what you're managing there in New York. I mean, it's a major, like billions and billions of dollars economic impact. And I'm sure Kentucky is even bigger with the sales, the number of farms, just all the things that go into it. People don't understand raising a horse and getting it to the racetrack and how well they're taken care of, from the grooms to all the feed and the hay and the grains and the bedding and the veterinarians and the horseshoers, horse haulers. I mean, it goes on and on and on. Most people do not understand how impactful or how large, wide ranging horse racing really is, to take care of one horse.
Yeah, in a world that AI is the common topic of conversation relative to how we can all be more efficient or more effective at our work, there is no AI substitute for the work that's required to get a horse ready to run. So to your point, there's an unbelievable amount of individuals that are specifically involved in just getting that one horse ready to run, or that one horse foaled at the farm.
Yeah. And it's amazing because all these horses, and I love it because I tell people all the time, if you have to choose coming back after you're gone, in afterlife, coming back in a different form, I would come back as a racehorse. I would. It would. I mean, they're so well taken care of, and I think they have a wonderful life. I know people who don't have a good perspective, have never been on the backside and seen it, may slip into that idea that they're abused or they're mistreated, but that's so far from the truth. I can't even explain it. You have to go see it for yourself. AQHA, American Quarter Horse Association, is doing, every year, they've been doing it for many years, they do a youth experience where they'll take a group of young students who are interested in racing and place them with trainers, and they do it over a weekend over their AQHA Racing Challenge. I'm sure you're familiar with that. I know Jen was and is. But what do you guys, does the Thoroughbred Racing have something similar to bring youth into racing like that?
There's not really like a national effort that would fall under one of the national groups. There are numerous local efforts. We do something called Naira's Leg Up, which is work with local high schools in both Saratoga and the downstate area to bring those groups on track. You get a chance to tour backstretch, understand kind of what a horse's regular day in the life looks like as far as training and what their care looks like. And then that group actually gets a chance to also see the racetrack operations side of the business. So they talk with a lot of our building trades that work and keep our facilities running in the backstretch. I typically spend about half an hour with them, talking to them about the larger impact of horse racing, horse breeding in the state of New York, and then the construction of New Belmont and why that's important to the industry. And then they get a chance to kind of ask questions about the business, about horses, about all the crazy stuff that they're seeing for the first time. They get a chance then to kind of watch a couple of races from the paddock, talk to some of the trainers and some of the owners. At the end, they kind of take a quiz, and then ultimately at the end of the day, gives them an opportunity to follow up with management if they have specific questions about any of the careers or the opportunities they saw on a given day. So we do a lot. It's just not really kind of done that same way that the AQHA does it, which I think has led to a lot of great involvement within the sport. And I think that there's definitely efforts to do more with the youth to get them understanding, what happens at a racetrack and how they can be a part of it. I still give backstretch tours, but I used to give a lot more backstretch tours in my previous roles in Minnesota and earlier in my career. And I used to tell people that a lot of the tours I gave 6, 7, 8-year-old kids see a horse for the first time. They think it would be fantastic. Their parents had some exposure to a horse or had been around a horse at some point in time in their career. The last 5 or 6 years, I've really noticed that it's like shifted another generation. So now I'm getting parents and kids that have neither one of which have been around a horse, and it really goes back to their grandparents being connected to a horse. So I think as a society, as we get further away from our agricultural roots, there's a lot of work that needs to be done for people to understand, not only horse racing, but just agriculture in general and its importance to society.
I have a couple of quick questions as we kind of got into that management conversation. You went to school at the University of Texas, Arizona, right? Racetrack industry program.
Yep, University of Arizona.
University of Arizona. Sorry, what was I saying? University of Texas.
I don't know.
I don't know what the hell I was talking about there.
I don't think that exists.
I went to UTEP, but that doesn't exist. University of Arizona Racetrack Management Program. And my younger brother who has passed on went to that program as well. And I know a lot of people who came through that program and went on to flourishing careers in racing industry. That's the only program I know of that kind of focuses only on racetrack management. Is that correct?
Yeah, the University of Louisville has an equine program that has some racing focus, but the University of Arizona is the only school that focuses on racetrack management specifically.
And why did you decide to go to into racetrack management? What led you there?
So long time back, my family owned racehorses really early in my life. My aunt was actually owned a horse farm and was a competitive shower, showed different breeds throughout the 70s. Ended up with actually registering the first Minnesota bred thoroughbred in the state of Minnesota, where I grew up, as a result of somebody that had boarded a horse with her that failed to pay their bills. So she obtained the thoroughbred in exchange for some bad debt. Ended up registering that as the first Minnesota bred horse, took it to the racetrack. Long story short, that horse ran well enough to make money, and she kept breeding horses, got my grandmother involved in the sport, which ultimately led to my interest going to the racetrack with the two of them throughout the 80s and the 90s. I had originally thought that I was going to go into business or be potentially an attorney. So I went to undergrad, focused on business and business management. At the same time, I actually had an internship at the racetrack in Minnesota doing PR and media work. And long story short, I decided that I wanted to go to more school. Racetrack program had a master's degree program at that point in time. So I was able to go take law classes and some business classes and get a racetrack degree, which was the only way I really knew how to break into the industry outside of, the family connections that I had to the sport. So that led a chance to come to New York and intern for a summer, worked for 15 years or so in Minnesota after that, and then returned to New York a few years ago. And oddly enough, actually now work with as my CEO, the person that I sat next to when I was in New York for the summer back in 2009. So,
Wow, full circle there. It's amazing what can transpire, the dominoes that can fall just by you having that exposure as a young kid, going to the racetrack, kind of fall in love with it, and then the doors start opening. You kind of start finding your way. I hear that a lot. People just don't know really what they're going to do, but something snaps and they are able to go through a couple doors they never even knew existed. So people out there listening, hey, you may have an opportunity here in the racing industry. I think there's a great need for people who are talented, have business acumen, executive type, or there's so many different layers of opportunities in the racing industry, from the marketing to all sorts of supply chain, supply management, restaurant side of it, everything. It's a big kind of a entertainment business, and a lot of folks come from all over the world, as you see for the Kentucky Derby and the Breeders' Cup. They come all over the world to race horses here. It's a pretty cool experience. I've never been to one of these big racetracks. If you're listening out there, I would highly encourage you to do so. Andrew, you mentioned Canterbury Park in Minnesota. You were there, senior vice president there for a number of years, 7 or 8 years?
correct.
And then you went to New York. And so now you live in New York. Tell us about, for people who are listening, how could they come out and just get involved? Number one, if they want to just come watch racing, Saratoga or other racetracks. And number two, how do they take that leap and get to that next step to actually maybe become involved, either from the backside working on the racetrack or maybe owning a horse?
Great question. I think to take them a little bit out of order, if you're interested in working the sport, to the topic that you talked about before, I think sometimes the sport, people view it as too much of a niche industry. And when you think about the entertainment aspects of what happens, there's a lot of parallels to pro sporting venues or other entertainment options. So ultimately, there's a place for a lot of different career paths within this industry. There's significant number of racetracks still around the country. So first, I guess, would be determining what's close to you and what your opportunities might be. But ultimately, I think to your point, if you have a management background or a skill set around management, there's always a need for management, not regardless of whether it's the racetrack or not. And if you happen to have some racing interest or some racing background with management experience, there's definitely opportunities to be sought. Specific to ways people can get involved from the backstretch perspective, I think that the best thing to be able to do from that realm would be looking up some of the individuals that people may know in terms of potential trainers or potential owners, and working directly with them. I think it's well documented that labor shortages are a real problem within not only the country but also this sport specifically. And if you have an interest and a background that can help, there's a lot of people out there that would be willing to employ you. It just may be on them to go out and seek who the people are they'd want to try to work with. Specific to people who want to take part as a fan, there's lots of great opportunities to get involved as a fan. Find the race meet that you want to go see, whether that be in New York, Kentucky, California, and find the day that you want to go. There's plenty of opportunities. We still race an awful lot, even like I said before, sometimes on Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays afternoons. So no excuse not to get out to the track and enjoy it for yourself.
Sure. When people think I want to find out what it would take to become an owner, put a partnership group together, are there any easy ways, easy paths to become an owner, or something that's preset for them almost? Or do they have to meet somebody and then really go have somebody kind of mentor them along?
Yeah, I think fractional ownership or micro shares, however you want to look at it, it's never been more popular. So, you can Google racehorse micro shares and probably find 50 different groups that are interested in selling some version of it. So I think that if you're interested in just getting in and getting an understanding, any of those groups provide an entry level basis. If you go up to the next tier, and that would be kind of like a partnership based model. Similarly, you'd find in every jurisdiction probably 3 or 4 larger entities that are willing to take on partners that might be buying more significant pieces of horses. And I think that from there, the question really becomes, what does the person want to do long term in ownership? And I think we've failed as a sport to sort out how we migrate people that might be interested from just basic interest to significant interest. And I think that that's an effort that collectively, if we wanted to talk back to our influencer or marketing discussion, we could look at and do better. Within, it would be finding out, how do we funnel people that have general interest into the appropriate ownership group that's going to maximize their experience, whether that be them wanting to be one of 4 people that own a horse, or them being paired up with somebody else that wants to own half of a horse. I don't think we do enough to maximize taking that interest into the right ownership model based on what the person's risk profile might look like, or the amount of money that they want to invest in the sport.
That's what I think needs to be done personally, is just to help people understand how they can become an owner. I mean, it seems like such a foreign world when people go to the racetrack. They think, well, I would never be able to do something like this. I have no idea how to even get involved. A lot of people who are, from my standards, quite wealthy, they go to the racetrack and it's so terrifying to them that betting $2 is crazy.
Big deal.
Like $2. Come on, pry that out of that wallet. But they don't understand it. They don't understand how to bet, but yet they'll go to Vegas and drop 100 or 500 or 1,000 in a slot machine and not even blink. So I know there's been around the country that different seminars to try to teach people the art of betting. And I like that word because horse racing still has a lot of that history, that what it was pageantry. And then now the betting came along. So now you can do all sorts of different bets, from multiple horses in a race, the top 2, the top 3, the top 4. And then you can layer races together, where you're doing a pick 4 or a pick 6, where you're trying to pick the winner in consecutive races, and all of the different pieces of that, from hedging your bets to adding multiple horses to, not just picking one, but picking multiple horses and then adding, of course, to the cost of the bet, but adding to your overall chances. So there's a lot of stuff going on there that people don't understand. You guys done anything in New York to help the average Joe learn how to bet?
I think that you guys hit on the key subject, and that's that it's quite complicated, comparable to other forms of gambling. So what our objective has been is to focus on how do we simplify what we're doing. And I think that there's a couple of different paths. I think one is a product that we're working on that uses AI actually to help the person kind of select what types of wagers they might want to make. And it's not by using the traditional nomenclature of what those bets are. It's by trying to assess kind of how much risk they want to take and how much reward they're looking for. And then giving them an opportunity to make like 2 or 3 easy choices that allows the system to make a bet for them and gives them something that they can follow. So I think that's one option for maybe the person that's familiar with racing that is overwhelmed by the process. And I think that the other significant opportunity that's still in front of us is sports betting. How much sports betting has changed since the repeal of PAPSA, and how many people are now familiar with some form of sports betting or have some form of sports betting app, I think is the most significant change in gaming in the United States, probably in the last 30 years. And horse racing needs to figure out ways to benefit off of the fact that society is a much more casual betting society than it was even 25 years ago. So work that we can do, whether it be through, promoting to those customers, working on technology that allows them to use their sports betting app to bet on horse racing, or putting horse racing wagers in formats that are more common to the sports bettor, I think can all help bridge some of those gaps relative to the language and nomenclature difficulties that you were referencing before, and all things that we're actively working on.
That's amazing. That's good. I mean, AI is changing the world. I'm glad that horse racing is finding a way to utilize it to make appropriate steps to bring more people into the sport. It's such a great sport. So, there's so many wonderful things to offer, and the casual fan needs to understand that more. So I think you're doing a really good job. And I'm planning to come to Saratoga, so I'm going to be, I'm going to be looking you up there and coming out. I want to see Saratoga. It's going to be a good time. Well, we appreciate you taking a few minutes of your day today. I know you're busy. And any picks for the Belmont, by the way, because this show is going to be aired before the Belmont comes out. We don't know who the field is yet, do we? Man's out, right? That was the one announcement. Huge marketing position right there. Yeah, I would love to see that rematch. The way journalism ran, I think he's gonna be awful tough to beat. That's a monster of a horse right there. So we'll be looking forward to it. If you're listening right now, definitely tune into the Belmont. If you go out to the races at Saratoga, find Andrew. He'll make sure to buy you a beer, I'm sure. So anybody watching the show, okay, you got it in. All right. Well, thanks for joining us, Andrew, and everybody listening today. I hope you enjoyed the show. Catch us next time. Until then, talk to you later.
Thank you for listening. For more information about today's show, please check out the show notes. Visit our website at www.petersonws.com or give us a call at 801-475-4002. Peterson Wealth Services is a registered investment advisor. This is a paid-for advertisement. Information presented on this program is believed to be factual and up-to-date, but we do not guarantee its accuracy, and it should not be regarded as a complete analysis of the subjects discussed. Discussions and answers to questions do not involve the rendering of a personalized investment advice, but are limited to the dissemination of general information. A professional advisor should be consulted before implementing any of the options presented. Peterson Wealth Services.